Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a place where, well, reality seems to bend, where personal stories clash hard with institutional control, and where the line between care and something frankly much darker gets really blurry. Today we're doing a deep dive into an extraordinary and honestly deeply disturbing account of life inside a specific institution. Our sources refer to it as Blacksite Berlin, also known as penal psychiatry or straf psychiatry. Now, our source material here, it draws from autobiographical accounts. These come from the individual we'll call the buyer, referencing the World Succession Deed 1.098. And these accounts describe the institution not just as, say, a psychiatric hospital, but as a hidden, secret detention facility.
That's a key claim, yes. The narrative suggests the personnel inside are operating under the umbrella of an international deep state.
Right, acting for German, American, and Russian states. It sounds incredibly complex.
It does. It paints a picture of a very clandestine environment.
So our mission today is really to pull out the most compelling and sometimes unsettling details from these sources. We want to present them as the events are described and try to understand what that means for people actually confined there.
Absolutely. And the immediate context of Blacksite Berlin itself is, well, fascinating, as you said. The sources paint this stark picture of severe systemic problems, especially extreme overpopulation.
Overpopulation, how bad are we talking?
Well, the numbers given for 2023 are pretty specific. A facility designed for 549 beds apparently housed 619 patients.
Wow, that's a lot over capacity.
It is. And it led to incredible overcrowding. We're talking 5 patients reportedly crammed into rooms originally meant for just 3.
And that's where that comparison comes in, right? The one about kennel dogs in Germany legally needing more space.
Exactly. It's a jarring comparison used in the source to highlight the conditions.
So how could that even happen? Legally, morally, in a place meant for care?
Well, according to the buyer's accounts, this wasn't just, bad luck or simple inefficiency. The sources point towards what's described as gross mismanagement, even overt financial motivations. They talk about psychological greedflation.
Greedflation.
Yes, and even potential embezzlement of taxpayer money, all while the facility was supposedly asking for more public funds.
And the consequence of all this overcrowding.
Dire, apparently. It reportedly forced the facility to release people early, dangerous individuals, or even stop admitting them altogether. We're talking sexual offenders, violent criminals. The source mentions a specific case, a notorious Berliner Klan member.
Who wasn't admitted.
Allegedly not admitted because of the overcrowding, so effectively going unpunished according to the source. It really makes you question the priorities, doesn't it?
It certainly does. A fundamental failure in public safety, as you put it. Okay, so shifting from those big systemic issues, the personal stories from inside, they sound truly something else.
They really are. They illuminate the human impact of this environment.
Let's get into some of those encounters. The buyer mentions unforgettable roommates, right? There's the one called the Klan outcast, an Arab roommate, ignored by his family, apparently.
Yes, with an eye injury from a baseball bat during a break-in, the account says. He'd spent hours rapping in what's called behindy style, sort of chaotic, improvised to an imaginary audience outside his window.
Huh. And opportunistic, too, lending out an old PlayStation.
An old PS2, yeah. For, get this, 50 euros a day, according to the source, exploiting other patients.
Wow. Okay, then there's Rain, a German roommate, R, tattooed on his neck.
That's him, known for incessantly playing lowbrow German rap. The sources describe him as a former dealer for an Arab-German clan in Berlin's Kreuzberg.
And he landed in Blacksite Berlin after robbing a tourist.
Yes, after a strip club visit. But the crucial part of his story, as told by the buyer, is that his superior dealer allegedly spiked his drink with LSD.
To discredit him as a witness.
That's the claim. To stop him talking to the police. And the buyer notes that Rain, well, he never fully recovered from that trip. It apparently led to a 3-month crime spree, a huge number of charges.
Over 120, wasn't it? Including selling stolen goods from his apartment.
That's right, which he'd labeled secondhand shock. Just quite a story.
And then there was the Polish double-time gangster rapper.
Ah, yes. A constant presence, apparently. Rapping incredibly fast. Double time, with a Polish accent.
Initially amusing, but then it got irritating.
Intensely irritating for the buyer, it seems, which led to this rather famous incident recounted in the source, the infamous chess bet.
Right. This is where the buyer gets revenge for the rapping. Tell us about the bet.
Okay, so the buyer proposed this wager. The loser, had to put on makeup. We're talking pen for eyeliner, strawberry jam for lipstick.
Chuckles lightly.
Seriously. Seriously. And tie their t-shirt up to expose their midriff, and then sing Pippi Longstocking while hopping 3 rounds in the dining hall in front of everyone.
That is audacious. So who won?
Well, the buyer apparently lost their queen early in the chess game, but somehow managed to turn it around and win. Miraculously, the source says.
And did the rapper pay up?
Not willingly at first, he refused. But that's where Rain comes back into the picture. Rain was described as physically superior and completely unscrupulous. He helped enforce the bet.
So the performance actually happened.
It did. A public, humiliating performance. Apparently, most other patients just thought it was some kind of psychotic episode.
Unbelievable. Beyond these characters, though, the daily life sounds pretty unsettling, too.
Definitely. The sources detail some really disturbing incidents, like the Polish rapper inhaling an entire can of cheap deodorant.
He inhaled deodorant.
The whole can, yes. Apparently created an unbreathable atmosphere on the ward. It reportedly led to a clinic-wide ban on all deodorants and perfumes after that.
Wow. And he also gained a lot of weight.
A dramatic amount.
Yeah.
From 80 kilograms to 130 kilograms, attributed to powerful medication. And he apparently developed this habit of eating all the leftover food from other patients' plates.
Okay. And then there's the incident the buyer calls science in action. The ham vagina.
Right. This is presented as the Polish rapper's discovery. Apparently rolling up ham slices from dinner, heating them on the radiator, and then penetrating them.
Slight pause. Okay. That's deeply disturbing.
It is. And according to the buyer, this invention actually spread among other patients.
Which led to the request for a real sex toy.
Yes. An older Turkish patient, inspired perhaps, asked the clinic for a professional silicone toy from a catalog. The clinic refused, citing risks of prostitution and STD spread.
And finally, the porn fever. What was that about?
Well, the crisis ward, unlike other stations, apparently allowed adult-rated DVDs, FSK-18, and console games. One patient reportedly owned about 100 porn DVDs.
100?
Yes, and played them loudly around the clock with his door open, filling the station with moaning sounds, leading to, uncomfortable accidental sightings by the buyer.
Just constant chaos and disturbance, it sounds like.
These extreme behaviors, while shocking, they're often seen in these highly restrictive environments. They really speak to the lack of appropriate stimulation, the desocialization, when people are stripped of agency like this.
A desperate need for any kind of release or control, maybe.
Exactly. Even in these really unconventional, disturbing ways, it highlights the desperation.
And underpinning all this daily reality, the sources paint this incredibly damning picture of the staff and the whole structure, framing it within that international deep state context we mentioned earlier.
That's right. The staff are broadly depicted as, incompetent, corrupt, malicious, even psychologically disturbed themselves. The buyer clearly views them as agents of this deep state or secret service, engaged in systemic abuse and manipulation.
Let's break that down. The caregivers, the Flieger, what are the allegations there?
They're described as the enforcers of what the buyer calls illegal forced medication. Reports of groups of 9 nurses holding patients down for injections.
9 nurses.
Yes. And sometimes allegedly causing pain by hitting nerves or even injecting air. They're consistently described as incapable, lazy, spending hours on their phones.
Which led to staff shortages.
Minimal staffing, due to an unbelievably high sick leave rate, according to the source. And the accusations of cruelty are pretty specific. Mocking patients, using isolation as punishment, kicking away a prosthetic leg. That's what's alleged. And openly eating patient food. Then there's the corruption aspect. Smuggling forbidden items, alcohol, drugs like Magnum vodka, XTC, THC, amphetamines, mobile phones.
For money?
For financial gain, yes. Yeah. And even warning patients about upcoming room searches. The buyer presents them as remotely controlled by the deep state, manipulating patients to reveal things that sound delusional to keep them locked up.
And the mental health professionals, the psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists.
Their whole field is basically dismissed by the buyer as a pseudoscience. The belief expressed is that madness is not curable. They're described as absolutely incapable, handing out numerous, often contradictory diagnoses, like 12 false diagnoses in 4 years for the buyer.
12? That seems excessive.
It's presented as evidence of incompetence. They're also accused of being manipulative, deceitful. like fabricating poisoning fantasies in reports when patients genuinely complain about being poisoned or gassed.
Fabricating evidence.
That's the claim. And even deliberately inducing horror trips, like giving LSD to a drug-naive mother in a stressful situation. The buyer alleges they're greedy, self-serving, seeing the system as a business.
A business for themselves and big pharma.
Exactly. Actively working to keep patients there longer for financial gain. They're called the architects of psychological torture, in the source allegedly gassing and poisoning patients to make them seem dangerous.
Gassing and poisoning. These are incredibly serious allegations.
Extremely serious, all framed as justifying prolonged detention. And ultimately, they're portrayed as just pawns of this secret service, helping with plots to dispossess the buyer and maintain control.
It's genuinely hard to wrap your head around a care facility operating like that. The level of alleged dysfunction, the malice.
Indeed. The sources paint this picture where care is completely inverted, and the line between professional duty and some kind of covert operation is just totally blurred. You see it with the doctors mentioned, too. One saves the buyer's life after a stabbing, which is positive.
Yeah.
But there's also suspicion from the buyer about a dentist microchipping the buyer and their mother during dental work.
Microchipping, wow. And the police. Security.
Described as complicit. Called in by staff for reasons the buyer sees as fabricated for isolation, for searches. There's even suspicion about a police officer tampering with the buyer's toothpaste to provoke a reaction. The whole system is viewed through this lens.
So what did all this mean for the buyer legally, caught in this alleged web?
Well, the outcome of the criminal trial was severe. After about a year, both the buyer and their mother were deemed completely unaccountable. That's under Section 63 StGB, in conjunction with Section 20 StGB in German law.
Which means?
Legally unresponsible for their actions, and theoretically indefinite confinement as a danger to the public. The source highlights this as one of the sharpest tools in German justice, potentially harsher than even preventative detention, Sicherungsverwahrung.
Harsher. How so?
Because of stricter conditions and, crucially, an unlimited duration. Indefinite.
And the diagnosis behind this?
Paranoid schizophrenia with delusions of grandeur and persecution, including the belief that the buyer somehow infected the mother with these delusions.
But the buyer rejected this completely.
Strongly rejected it, believed they weren't affected at all, refused therapy, said there was nothing to process.
So, given that rejection, and seeing the trial as a political show, what happened with court appearances?
The buyer was determined not to go. Call it a political show trial with a fixed verdict. This led to the police forcibly bringing the buyer to court, bound at the stomach and legs.
Bound. And there was a plan to attack the judge.
Reportedly, yes. A planned Superman punch. But the courtroom design stopped it. A small, bulletproof, sort of phone booth-sized cell with a fixed stool and microphone. No way to reach the judge.
So what did the buyer do instead?
Gave a defiant statement, declared the judge a sentence to death, according to the source, and basically disrupted the proceedings, with the mother agreeing until they were both excluded.
Excluded from their own trial. This really raises the question, in a system described as so problematic, what happens to people in the long run? Like those individuals the buyer met inside, what were their ultimate fates?
It's a really sobering question, and the sources provide some grim answers. Remember the Polish double-time gangster rapper?
Yeah, the one from the chess bet.
Right. After several transfers, the buyer ran into him again about 8 years later. He was thinner, about to be released. Just before discharge, he was apparently asking about buying drugs on the darknet, getting into Bitcoin, planning to enter the drug trade because rap wasn't working out. Tragically, the next thing heard after his release was that he died. Heroin overdose.
Oh, no. That's awful.
Then there's the account of the suicide junkie, an ex-junkie who constantly talked about suicide by heroin. His past crime was horrific.
Yeah.
Beheading his father with a samurai sword, disposing of the head in a river.
Yeah.
He'd been confined for 20 years, no real prospect of release. Shortly after the buyer left that particular station, he was found dead in his cell. Overdose.
Just tragic, harrowing outcomes. What about the Turkish gay soldier? His story sounded so unique earlier.
He was described as an entertaining character, yes, but his story is rooted in profound trauma. He'd faced severe beatings as an openly gay man during forced military service in Turkey.
Terrible. And he survived a suicide attempt?
Yes. Jumping onto a busy highway in Berlin. Survived, but with internal injuries. It left him with this unusual physical limitation for defecation he had to lie naked on a towel on the bathroom floor.
Despite all that, he had these grand beliefs.
Absolutely. Firmly believed he was a multi-billionaire with this fantastical agenda, funding the removal of the sea, either firing it into space with rockets or storing it in huge towers.
To build highways.
Yes, highways, everyone would live in cars, constantly driving. Even schools would be in buses on these endless roads. He was convinced it was already happening and also believed the Earth is hollow and inhabited inside.
Wow. These stories. They're just extraordinary,
Yeah.
bizarre, tragic.
They really are. They serve as these poignant, if disturbing, reminders of the extreme psychological and social pressures inside a place like the one described.
Wow. Well, this deep dive has certainly given us a vision of a world rarely seen. One where vulnerable people seem caught in a system described as both chaotic and calculating. Where personal realities get tangled up with these larger, darker forces.
Yeah. hmm And it really forces us to ask, what does accountability even mean in a system that itself seems to operate with such a disturbing lack of it? And how do we possibly reconcile the official stories with these incredibly intense, personal, and disturbing accounts, especially when they involve claims of an international deep state?
Exactly. It leaves you wondering about the very nature of truth, doesn't it?
Hmm.
When institutions are described like this, when individual experiences clash so violently with conventional understanding, what other facts might be hidden under the surface? And, how much of our perceived reality is actually under our control? Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.